What's going on, Coldwater Nation? It's Geoff, and welcome back to another fly tying tutorial. Today I'll be showing you how I like to tie an Adams fly for a fly of the month for April. Originally designed by Leonard Halliday in 1922 and named after his best friend Charles Adams, this delicate fly is not only visually appealing to our eyes, but is downright irresistible to most fish looking for an easy topwater snack. So without further ado, let's head over to the bench and get started on tying an Adams fly.
Yeah. There he goes.
Oh my god, look at that! Look at that toe!
The squirmy worm is an effective and very deadly fly.
What's up, guys? My name's Brian,
And I'm Geoff.
and you're watching Empire Coldwater.
Let's rip some lips. This video is brought to you in part by Upstate Excursions and by Black Dog Outdoor Sports. We will begin by placing a size 14 dry fly hook into our vise with the shank nice and level. Next, I will grab my 8/0 light tan thread and start my thread wraps at about the 3/4 mark on the shank of the hook, and then I will snip away my tag before taking some additional wraps to make a small buildup to tie in the wings of the fly. Now I will take 2 equally sized Grizzly saddle hackle feathers and line them up side by side before holding back fibers of each hackle to expose equal sized tips. These tips will become the wings of the fly and should be about a hook shank in length. Taking that pair of wings, I will tie them in using a collection wrap before using a few tight wraps to ensure the wings won't slip out during the next steps. Afterwards, I will snip off the excess, but don't throw those out. They will become important in later steps of this pattern. Now that the wings are tied into place, I will wrap my thread up behind the tie-in point of the wings before folding the wings back towards the bend of the hook and taking wraps in front of the wing to build up a thread dam. This will help hold the wings in a vertical fashion and make for a better side profile of the fly. To keep the wings splayed at about a 30-degree angle from each other, I will take a few figure-8 wraps around the wings before taking a few posting wraps around the bases of both wings to help control some of the errant fibers created by bending the wings into the vertical position. Now I will wrap my thread down the shank to start creating a nice tapered body for the fly, stopping my thread wraps at about the halfway point on the shank of the fly. Now I will grab one of those Grizzly saddle hackle feathers I used to make the wings and strip off a pinch of side fibers, making sure to keep the tips of the stripped fibers somewhat aligned. I'll then measure those side fibers to be about the hook shank in length before tying them in with a collection wrap followed by a few tight wraps down to about the 1/4 mark of the shank. Now I'll take my scissors and snip off the butt ends of the fibers. This next step is optional, but I do like to add variety to my fly, so I will actually take a pinch of those same style fibers I just tied in for the tail, but in a different color, and tie those in starting at the 1/4 mark of the shank before wrapping my thread down to just before the start of the bend of the hook. Then I will take a wrap or two below the tail fibers to hold the tail level to the shank before taking a few wraps to hold all of that together. Now I will go back and snip off the butt ends of those colored side fibers before taking a few wraps of thread to smooth out the transition from the tail of the fly to the wings, leaving my thread at the base of the tail to begin the next step. I will start by waxing my thread before I grab my muskrat pelt. Then I will strip a bit of gray undercoat from the guard hairs to use as my dubbing. You can use any color dubbing you desire, but usually a gray or a light tan seems to look best in my opinion on an Adams. Now I will create a thin dubbing noodle about a few inches in length before taking wraps up the shank of the fly to create a nice taper up to the wings. Now I will take some whiting hackle feathers in size 14, measured on my hackle gauge, or when bent next to the hook, the fiber should be roughly double the hook gap in length. One of these whiting hackles will be grizzly colored and the other will be a yellowish gold. Taking both hackle feathers, I'll strip about 1/8 of an inch off the end of each feather before tying them in separately behind my wings, one feather at a time. With both those feathers tied in, I will wrap my thread up towards the eye of the hook before taking my yellow whiting hackle feather and taking 3 wraps clockwise behind the wing, as well as 3 wraps clockwise in front of the wings before tying off the end of the hackle in place with a few tight wraps and snipping away the excess. Now I'll repeat that same process for the Grizzly whiting hackle feather, only this time I'll be wiggling the feather as I wrap to avoid clumping down as many of the yellow fibers as possible before tying off the hackle, and again snipping away the excess. Now I'll take my scissors and snip away any trapped fibers that got caught up in the tying process around the head of the fly, before taking my whip finishing tool and putting a 5 to 6 turn whip finish at the head of the fly. Then I'll snip away my thread before taking a small drop of head cement and dab it into the head of the fly, ensuring that the cement soaks through the head wraps to ensure a solid bond. And that's all there is to tying an Adams fly. If you enjoyed this fly tying tutorial and you want to see more like this one, leave a like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss any of our new videos. That's all for now. Tight lines, everybody.